As we're waiting for further proceedings here, I want to bring in our panel because, as I said, I do believe the Pope just walked right into the politics of climate change. It was a full-throated statement right there.
No longer a problem that can be left to a future generation. Very strong statement.
It was politics, was it not, Judge?
It's a hot-button political issue because this administration has chosen to address climate change administratively through the EPA rather than legislatively in areas that Congress go. It's very, very hot button.
I thought he had saved these comments for his address to Congress.
But he did not. No, that was a clear-cut statement on climate change.
He
also
invoked Martin Luther King's 1963 I Have a Dream speech when he said about climate and development, we have defaulted on a promissory note. Now is the time to honor it. Mr. King's speech at that time was talking about basically jobs and discrimination against people of color. By the way, it's worth noting at this time that the unemployment rate for African Americans is still higher than 10%.
He did say that we had defaulted on a promissory note. I think
that's the reference to the
1963 Martin Luther King.
He's taking Martin Luther King's words about treating people equally irrespective of the color of their skin and attempting to extrapolate it to the economy.
I was surprised at such an overt statement. Which I thought was a political statement of support for the President Obama, on climate change. I did not expect that welcoming remarks, I'm glad to be here, Mr. President, I didn't think that would include things like, I approve of your initiative to reduce air pollution. It seems clear that climate change is a problem. It is time to change. This climate change is powerfully striking our homes and our cities.
I'm going to suggest that the President was aware of what he said because, as Emac pointed out, seated in the first row is Gina McCarthy, who's the EPA administrator. In most civilized countries of the world, these environmental regulations are enacted by elected representatives. In the United States of America, they're being enacted by executive fiat through the President and the EPA and Ms. McCarthy.
It is extraordinary that right from the get-go, a papal visit to the United States, the first time this Pope has been in America, we go right into climate change. Yep, that's it. That's
well,
topic
it was a big part
one.
of his June encyclical, wasn't it? I mean, he made the environment a very big part of that, and he's just echoing what he said back in June.
One would have thought that maybe there are other things to talk about.
Yes,
right.
I mean, like the persecution and slaughter of tens of thousands of Christians in North Africa.
Which the President did note in his
but it was a brief mention, for heaven's sake. Just a tiny fractional statement from President Obama.
Who then
nothing from Pope Francis.
And the President then switched gears right to climate change after those remarks.
Right.
For the Pope to invoke Martin Luther King is quite striking because the promissory note Dr. King was referring to this time was basically the architects of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence signed that promissory note. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And Mr. King said that was a promissory note to get people out of discrimination and into jobs.
But we're not providing nearly enough resources, to deal with the issue in Iraq, and we really don't have much of a plan to deal with the challenges in Syria. I am told that finally, and maybe substantively, this strategy is being reviewed again towards a view of making some positive changes, and I'm hoping that truly takes place.
General, look, thank you very much indeed for being with us this morning. I don't think either of us was expecting to respond to a papal speech dealing with climate change, but you dealt with it very well, and we appreciate you being with us, General. You can come again anytime you like, sir. We appreciate you. Thank you, sir.
Good talking to you, Stuart. I didn't expect to respond to a papal speech either, but I'm delighted to have to do so.
General, I'm sorry, I've got to repeat. I was shocked at how much time the Pope spent on climate change and how he walked right into the politics of climate change. But again, I digress. General, thanks very much for joining us. We do appreciate it.
Good talking to you, Stuart.
Yes, sir. Okay. Liz Peake is with me with the Fiscal Times. And again, I'm going to not exactly ambush you, but I'm going to ask you what you thought. We have just sat through the President of the United States greeting Pope Francis to the White House, and the Pope then launched into a 15-minute speech in which it was largely about climate change and how we've all got to get on board with efforts to combat climate change. I think he stepped right into policy. So, Liz, I'm sorry, I'm ambushing you, I know I am. What do you think to this? I'm astonished by this.
I am absolutely not shocked at all. I think anyone who has read the Pope's encyclical, Laudato Si', which is a hard-left document espousing world redistribution of wealth, international organizations that would supersede national authority, and of course a very hard line on climate change and anti-fossil fuel, should expect nothing but from the Pope. I think this is his line. Yesterday on the plane he said people know he really wasn't a lefty. I think he wants this to be a very pleasant, pastoral visit to the United States. But think about this. He's from Argentina. He grew up in Argentina, a very left-wing country that uniquely in South America hates Americans. Pew Research has shown that like 75% of the rest of South America thinks United States is pretty terrific. Argentina does not. Only about a third of Argentinians approve of the United States. That's how he grew up. Think about this, too. He's never been to the United States. Don't we think that's just a little unusual for a man of his worldly travels and presence? This is who this Pope is, and he's very charming. Most of us embrace his his anti-poverty position, humility, absolutely. Love the fact that he drives around in a Fiat, I guess, Italian car, makes sense. But the truth of the matter is, this is his economic and political agenda, and it's hard left. And don't kid yourself. That's what we're going to hear.
This has absolutely nothing to do with the markets, nothing to do with finance whatsoever. This is pure politics. That's what it is, isn't it?
It is politics, and it also, in my view, has very little to do with religion. I mean, he's supposed to. I understand totally that in his view, fighting poverty is basically in the same trajectory as fighting climate change, because he sees the people being injured by climate change as being amongst the world's most poor. But what it is, he actually advocates in for less growth, a reversal of growth in the developed world to fuel growth in the underdeveloped world. How anti-development policies would help the poor of India or Africa is nobody's, I mean, who knows, right? It's not coherent.
Tens of millions of people.
Of course.
You raise the price of energy, and what does that do to poor people in Africa, parts of Asia, Latin America? It impoverishes them.
Yeah.
And the Pope is now advocating precisely those policies.
That's exactly right. It's hard to understand because it's incoherent. And honestly, everyone should read this encyclical, just as everyone should have read Obama's biographies before he became president. It's very revealing.
What's really striking is that Uruguay, which is a tiny neighbor to Argentina, where the Pope is from, has become really a bastion of pragmatic capitalism, common sense capitalism, attracting business and investment. Now GDP per capita is higher than that of Argentina.
It's extraordinary.
Striking.
Which once was the world's most prosperous nation.
That's right.
Amongst the top
100 years ago. That's right.
But to Liz's point, I don't think we should. I know you're surprised, but we know this is what's surprising is the occasion, the timing of this. We thought it would come in Congress, not on the White House lawn.
Where's the statement about saving my soul? Where is the religious?
That's right.
That's the question, right?
The Holy Father is in the United States of America, minister to my soul, to the soul of all Catholics, all Christians. Come on.
I am a Catholic. I want to know how to get into heaven.
I don't think climate change is going to be particularly relevant to that. I don't mean to be facetious and sarcastic. I don't mean to be that way. But I was shocked at the prominence of climate change in that message.
I am, too. And it's interesting because he has a real opportunity in the United States, doesn't he? I mean, this is a country where organized religion and Catholicism is sort of questioned. It's under attack in various parts of the country. I would think he would want his message to be universal, to play up the humility and the aspects of his doctrine which are so appealing to everybody. I think he should really push education. That's something that the Catholic world is very behind and has had a big role in. I think it's very skewed message.
How does this play to conservative Catholics in this country?
Well, according to the headline in the Wall Street Journal, unease greets Pope on Catholic rights.